Hi, I'm back with some more of my kids' toys to share an illustration that I always thought was very powerful about the idea of privilege. In my last video, I mentioned the importance of clarifying terms and making sure that you know what you're talking about in terms of, are you arguing about the right thing? Are you on the same page about what it means? And privilege is one of those often misunderstood concepts that can lead to the dialogue shutting down because one person is talking about one thing, the other person is talking about something else, they don't realize it, and they just have this really intense argument. That's kind of where I was several years ago on the notion of privilege, especially white privilege. When I heard it, I felt very defensive because I thought the implication was that because I'm white, everything was easy, everything was handed to me, and I didn't work for anything. That's not really what privilege is about. It's a series of advantages. So if you think of terms, and if you think of privilege in terms of advantages, that helped to clarify it for me. And so for white privilege, it doesn't mean that I haven't had challenges and that things haven't been difficult. It just means that my white skin has usually not been one of those challenges or one of those difficulties. So once I listened and kind of dropped my defensiveness and understood that, it made the conversation a lot better. And I can still disagree with people on privilege, but at least we're talking about the same thing. So one of the simulations that happened in a graduate class of mine about privilege. And I wanted to share a version of it. This was done in a classroom, and I'm in my basement, so I really can't do it like that. But let me explain it, and then I'll kind of redo it here. So there was a recycling bin, and it was placed someplace in the room, and we all had to crumple up paper balls and throw them in the recycling bin. So it was a lot of fun. There's paper balls flying everywhere. So the problem was the recycling bin was put on one side of the room. So the people who were nearest to it could literally just reach over their desk and drop their paper ball in, and we were all supposed to keep score. And so they got a point. And then those of us across the room had to throw the ball, which again was fun, but if we're keeping score, it didn't work out well for us. Most of us didn't make any. I don't remember if I did or not, but if we did make one or two, it was few and far between. And so we were all asked to keep score. And then at the end of it, it was really clear who had the advantage. So I'll illustrate here. So let's say these three, Toad, Kitty, and Ashima, are participating in a similar thing. And let me put the bucket right here. So clearly Ashima has the advantage. So let's say we play 10 rounds of this. And at the end of the 10 rounds with the bucket right over here, Ashima has 9. Let's say she missed one. Kitty has 5, and Toad has 1. Let's say Toad got lucky with one of those long distance passes. So the score after 10 rounds is 10 to 5 to 1. Let's say at that point I say, you know what, this isn't right. I apologize. Let me change things up and make it more even. So I put the bucket in the middle and I rearrange things so now everybody is equidistant. Oh, stay there, Ashima. So now everybody, she's really eager to get in on this game. So everybody is equidistant. It's right in the middle. Everything is equal now. And so the game continues. The score does not reset. So even though Toad and Kitty will have an easier time making the baskets, they're still not going to catch up to Ashima because she had such a head start before. And this, in the illustration that the professor did, was kind of like in American history. There was a lot of outright legal discrimination, segregation really, in terms of housing. It was called redlining, and there were other policies too, but the one I remember most was redlining. So the city planners would literally take a map of the city out and highlight in red certain areas where blacks would be relegated. So they would not approve loans outside of that little area, whereas whites, they could have more geographic freedom and their loans would be approved. So this was made illegal in the 1960s. I don't remember exactly which act it was, but it really continued for some time after that, even though it was illegal. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, that it stopped in the 1980s. And so in the 1980s, well, before the 1980s, it was kind of like this for the white people, and then other people were at this disadvantage. And then in the 1980s, that's when they stopped completely, and okay, everything's equal now. Well, just because everything was equal doesn't mean that everything is really equal for these folks, because again, Ashima had such a head start. So if you think about how families accrue wealth and pass it on, a lot of that's through property. So these white families had generations of the ability to move where they wanted to and improve their property and then pass that on to the next generation. And their property values were relatively high, at least higher than in the black communities. So in the black communities, they did not have that opportunity. So wealth couldn't be built through property not much anyway, and then didn't have much to pass on to the next generation. So it just really helped me to understand why history matters, and why do we keep bringing up old stuff like the Jim Crow era. It's gone and things are better. Well, yeah, but it still matters. So again, just because I made things equal doesn't get rid of all those inequalities. So I wanted to pass along that simulation and encourage you to look up redlining. There's a TV show called Adam Ruins Everything, and he does a video on why the suburbs are white. He's obnoxious. He's supposed to be. That's his whole character, but it does a good job explaining that. I have a website going called, it's at www.tinyurl.com/discussing race and racism. I got really creative with that title. So again, that's tinyurl.com/discussing race and racism. And it's still under construction, but on there are all kinds of resources and links, and that Adam Ruins Everything video is on there, as well as another one that's a little bit more serious called Systemic Racism Explained. And I would encourage you to check those out for much more scientific description of this than what I did with my toys in my basement. So hope that helps. Check out that website again, tinyurl.com/discussing race and racism. And there's lots of resources on there, including contact information for me. I'd be happy to keep the dialogue going. Keep talking to each other, people. Take care. Bye.